Overwhelmed with online or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all of the self-appointed gurus, big buzzwords and empty promises? The Breaking Digital podcast by Doyle Bueller tells you exactly what smart entrepreneurs need to know to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. It's about digital leadership and delivering the best value for your business online to your audience. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital leadership and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Bueller.
Today I'm talking with John Lynch, and he's the Group Planning Director of TBWA in New York. It's a creative and digital agency, and they've actually worked on some amazing projects. If you remember the Apple Be Different campaigns from, 30 years ago? Yeah, TBWA was involved in those. So I have a great conversation with John just coming up, and we talk about digital is marketing, we talk about culture is our competition, and we talk about disruption. And John's had sort of a lot of experience in being entrepreneurship as well as doing the agency work. And so he's got some really cool insights of, what's happened to the market, what's happened to the agency model, what's happened with the entrepreneur model as well, and how these things are sort of colliding into a very big disruption coming up very, very soon. So I look forward to chatting. And now here's John Lynch. All right. Hi, and welcome back. Today I'm with John Lynch, who's the Group Planning Director of TBWA New York. They're a creative and digital agency that spans the globe. Good morning, John. How are you today?
Good morning, Doyle. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you doing now? How did you get into digital?
I got into digital way back in the Ice Age. I started in The Economist in London. I hate to say it, about 1994,
Wow.
when The Economist was just deciding to trial out this new venture. They didn't even know what it was, but we were the first audited site in the world, and as a result, someone had the bright idea. We should sell this not on sponsorship, which everyone was doing. It was only banners then, but let's sell it on cost per view. So I was there when that happened. So that shows the age. But then I went to Australia, went to McCann's, set up a digital arm there, but wanted to get a bit more purist and got involved with Image, which I think I was the second Sydney employee with Liam Walsh. And we built that company up to being the beast that it was. I worked in ANZ in those days, which were spending 3-4 million, which was just a ridiculous amount. I think this would be in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Then went a little bit specialist into Isobar on websites. Still in Australia. Did a bit of a stint at IBM as the Asia Pacific digital guy, which was just part of the job, which had 12 countries to deal with, but digital was just still growing there, and that was in about 2005. Started my own business after that, and after a while came back to the UK. I was the MD of agency.com, which is the old digital part of TBWA, which I'm working on now. Stayed in Dublin for a while, a little stint in London, and then about 5 months ago came out here. So it's always been a very strong digital flavor.
And what seems to be attracting you to digital?
Well, digital is marketing, I guess, these days. I was lucky enough to spot it. Everyone says, I'm not quite sure. It was just more of this is interesting. It sucks you in. It still does. You got things like every new day there's a new app that starts a conversation about where could it bring the world. So still excites me.
Yeah, well, you've done some pretty cool entrepreneurial projects as well. Is that what's the difference between that and typical agency type work?
Well, the agency tends to think they're entrepreneurial, but I think a combination of enjoying the journey in entrepreneurial with the prospect of a big payout and the idea that you're on boss, it sort of fills you with a different type of motivation than you do at an agency. The agency tends to, no matter how small it is, it tends to be some sort of trying to create a machine. Whereas the entrepreneurial stuff that I did was always the peaks, the time when I'm most happy. I've done a few of them. I had a job site years ago, just before IBM, um, which was like set up as a dating site, which was following the big trend in dating at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Again, lessons there was I should have got more partners, should have shared it out, but of course I was going to change the world and make 1 billion. In those
Right.
days, a couple of million was never enough. You needed you were thinking global. I remember scurrying around looking for how can I get the .co.uk and the .coms and just sort your all. I should have sorted my local market first and then thought about the rest.
Yeah, sometimes we think too big.
Sometimes you think, yeah, and I think part of the whole entrepreneurial thing is you have to be somewhat delusional, because it's 9 times out of 10. What am I talking about? 5% of all uh, the stats I heard recently is it's 1 in 20 makes it past the third year in some shape or form, pivoted and whatever else. So your chances of success are so low.
Mm,
So you have to be somewhat delusional.
yeah. Well, why do you think they're so low then?
I think it's because the system pushes you to get out there and try it. And it's almost like a Darwinian thing. It suits the system because I could I could sell uh, yellow widgets or red widgets and think everyone wants pink widgets. But if I'm taking the risk of my time, effort, resources, and it doesn't work, there's no skin off anyone's, only mine knows. But they'll give me a pat on the back, and the next guy will try something else. So the system needs entrepreneurs. It's the lifeblood. But the reality is, it's a Darwinian throwing stuff at a side of a wall, hoping stuff sticks. Most of it doesn't.
Yeah, so it almost seems like it's too easy then. If there's no barrier to entry, right? You
There's
you
no barrier to
you
entry
have
these
an
days. Yeah.
idea and away you go.
And I think the culture now, if anything, is even more get out there and try it. The world's your lobster. So
Hmm.
and I'll do it again. I'm sure at some point or another I'll find it again. But that I think if you go and buy a corner shop and sell sweets, you're going to probably be okay. But I think part of the in the digital sphere is it moves so fast and there's so many changes and there's so many infrastructural things. Like for instance, I'm in New York now and they're talking about the G5, 5G, sorry. So what'll that bring? Another wave of products and services and guys throwing lots of money at products and services that need high bandwidth mobile. There's all it's so change. It's so up for change. So
So is that gonna affect sort of entrepreneurs of the future, or do you think we'll have sort of a better grip of success versus failure?
I think you'll get more failure, if anything, because there's so many people now giving it a go. And it's a good thing in a sense because there's nothing like a good lesson in failure to make you a success down the line. Most like I'm interviewing a lot of millennials that have never failed at anything, and there's something lacking.
Well, they haven't had
Uh,
time to fail.
they haven't had time to fail, but apparently 80% of the zillennials or whatever you want to call it
It's millennials.
want to do their own business.
Oh, really?
I heard a stat recently, and it's we work for GoDaddy here, and part of the small business team sort of supports 10, 11-year-olds that are doing things online
But is
because they
there,
obviously need a website these days.
yeah, is there actually a market though? Like how do you make money with those types of ventures?
I don't know how much money they make, but it's great news, and
Mm,
it's culturally the type of thing that they want to portray. Little Jimmy, who's 10 years of age, creates an app that sells X. you could do it too. It's a simple message. It's the
Yeah.
new American dream, I guess. But I'm not sure whether I had similar sort of stories happening in the UK, and I'm sure they're still happening in Australia. But back to that point, it suits the system, and there's always someone's going to step forward and give it a go.
Mm.
And, and I'm not saying, I'm worse than the system. I'm sort of addicted to that whole idea of what could be tomorrow. I think there's a lot more. There's a famous saying is enjoy the journey rather than the destination. But I think I'm more of a enjoying the journey
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, excellent. And you mentioned Zillennials.
Zillennials, yeah.
What's the origin of that one?
Well, the Zillennials are coming in behind the Millennials. The Millennials are getting old now.
Oh,
The
okay.
top end of a millennial is
Oh,
36 years of age.
yeah.
I can't remember the bottom end, but they're 20, so they're becoming mainstream.
Oh,
Whereas
okay.
your Zillennials are coming in with born
Post
post
2000.
2000,
Okay.
and those guys are just the Snapchat generation. And we were talking yesterday about the real estate on a mobile phone now, how important that is, and how Facebook has been shifted from the little four box things at the bottom and replaced by Snapchat. Hugely significant marketing moves, because if you can't hit them through the traditional social channels, how are you going to do them on Snapchat? And because Snapchat is so private, it's very difficult to get in, and it's another headache, a
Yes.
challenge.
Yeah. Well, that's what entrepreneurship is about,
That's
challenges.
what it's all about. Yeah.
But so are we chasing the market or is the market chasing us?
Oh, we're absolutely chasing the market. We have. There's a saying here. We had um, a big love-in recently, and our senior management were coining the phrase that culture is our competition now. So the whole idea that culture is, again, back to that whole Darwinian thing. Unless you're actually with and one step ahead, you're going to be swamped, and you're going to die off. And the other analogies, there was a lot of analogies out there, was if you think about culture as a river, unless you paddle faster, the river controls you.
Mm.
So we have systems in place here. Disruption was always the TBWA way forward. Just a little bit of background, TBWA, we're the people that came up with the think different for Apple.
Oh,
That's the
really? Yeah.
ultimate disruption idea, which catapulted Apple to stardom. Uh, we did our little bit to do that, but obviously the product services and Steve Jobs did the rest. But that was the classic disruption, sort of thinking about a cube that sits under your desk differently, rather than sort of a computer that generates spreadsheets. It was built for creative people, and that has put the message that TBWA has pushed with all its iPod ads and its current taken on the iPhone 6 ads, if you've seen them around.
Yeah.
It's all about that creativity that comes out of computing. Um, but disruption is a cycle. Like for Apple, that's been 30 years, but it's been slowly tightening down, where people have had to disrupt every 3 to 5 years. And now we've looked at the point where we have what we call disruption live. And the disruption gives you that sense that there's a white space out there that you can move into, sort of away from the crowd. Disruption Live does that on a daily basis. Experiments with looking a little bit. Try all this at a low cost, low risk, and see what happens. See if you get any bites, and if it works, move towards it. And to cut a long story short, it's the closest I've seen a company of this size come to that sort of entrepreneurial spirit of getting of just giving things a go. So we get a briefing every morning at 10 o'clock about what are the culturally significant things that happened in the last 24 hours. We try and compare them against clients. We work out whether there's an opportunity to get into that conversation. We brief it out if there is, and within 2 or 3 hours, we should have a product or a message or an image or a video or to put online. It's all predominantly through social channels.
Hmm.
And that's sort of that's to answer the original point. You have to keep ahead of culture as opposed to allow culture to change and catch up.
Isn't that more of a guessing game though?
Purely,
Yeah,
it's back to that entrepreneurial spirit. I guess that I will be able to sell pink widgets when everyone's buying red,
yeah,
unless you try to sell one or two, and you can do it cost effectively, fast, fail quick, as the old Facebook saying is, and learn fast. It's a guessing game, but
it
we don't know
is.
where we don't know ultimately. There's macro signs that things are. I know that next year they'll introduce a better um, uh, 5G network. That'll have some macro effects, but how that has on micro products and services that we deal with, we've sort of approach our clients' business looking forward. They have horizons that they actually look at from a normal point of view. That there's macro things that won't change.
Hmm.
Maybe in the next 5 years, and people, for instance, we have auto companies. No matter how fast an autonomous cars come in, ultimately we'll still be driving a car in the same way in 5 years, unless something drastic happens. So we can plan for macro, but the micro is there is always for every client that we have, we always imagine there's some teen or MIT or someone like that is tinkering on something that will ultimately change or disrupt their game completely. So we have to be sticking our fingers into the little cultural streams that are happening and testing out whether they're valid or not. So it is a guessing game. Back to your original point, but you do have to be out there trialing and erroring and failing and learning.
Yeah,
So
it's well, yeah. From that perspective, it's quite sounds quite intense, and obviously the agency world is highly competitive. But do you feel that maybe you're taking some of that entrepreneurship away if you try something and it doesn't work? Like, aren't there other factors too that could be involved, like market, like exposure, like brand awareness, that sort of thing?
but we always set out to succeed.
We do.
I'm not quite. If the question is whether you think we're not giving it enough time or not giving enough effort, but the whole idea is to inject into some of these. I can't name the names, but some of these pretty old companies, but with pretty solid structures and rigid cultures and slow decision making processes, giving them some sort of forefront opportunity to just uh, trial and error, to try and fail or try and succeed. I can anecdotally tell you about one particular um, mini disruption that we did based on a product that was very features led. And we did a few experiments on found footage, which is going around YouTube, taking images of something that was happening that related to the product but had a very emotional appeal. We took some of them, stuck them together into a little video, and then posted it and give it a little bit of social money. And that got a great response. This was about 12 months ago. So much that we tried it again and sort of dialed it up and did a little bit more advanced. And that had much more success. And now their entire strategy has moved from being a product feature-led message to completely selling on emotion, with the product and the features very much as a sub point. And that's the sort of thing that we tried to do. So and that's came directly out of experimenting with that, looking at culture, looking at how people are perceiving this particular product, how it's becoming very much a hidden necessity that has negative connotations and expenses, but how you can tackle that and make it more exciting. And they're currently redefining the industry now because of what they're doing.
Well, yeah,
So
I guess I was referring to sort of that. Well, let's say in that case that the project didn't go quite as planned, like it didn't get quite as much engagement or pickup or whatever.
yeah,
Is it a matter of just scrapping it and say, no, it's a terrible idea? Or is it more just, hey, we have something good here. We've got a good seed, let's just kind of tweak it a little bit. And when do you
yeah.
kind of draw the line to say, okay, well, no, it's no go, or yeah, let's tweak it.
Well, yeah, that's assuming we know what we have. Yeah, so we always tweak it. So let's say back to the widget idea. If you have you've tried pink, everyone else is buying red widgets, and they're not buying that much, but there seems to be some level of interest. We will try variations of pink to see whether that's still in there. So nothing dies. It is like back to that whole Darwinian thing. If you have a slight cellular change that may give you a minute advantage, you need to pick up on that because there's no huge changes. You don't no yeah, men didn't change from monkeys to humans overnight type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
There was a long evolutionary process. So we look at it from that point of view. So there's nothing ever gets thrown away. If
okay,
something is a complete disaster and there's negative connotations and the brand suffers, we're in trouble.
yeah,
But the whole idea is experiment small, and try and listen as intently as possible, because that's the other part of the equation is once we put this out there, we really intensely listen to it. If it's of interest, we dial it up with some social, listen a bit more. So that's the sort of the simple analogy.
okay.
They usually die off on themselves quicker if they're a bad idea. So
Yeah, yeah, true. Well, especially with, developing that social impact,
yeah,
as well, you can see it quickly, but they do need an audience big enough to sort of get that message clear.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that's becoming an increasing problem. Like there was a time in Facebook when a great idea would just go gangbusters, whereas now Facebook, and this is my anecdotal take on it, has basically said we'll give you a little, but if you want any massive audience now, you need to pay for it, which is huge connotations on memes and getting things out there. Because if you're allowing people to pay for presence in news feeds. Um, you know, GE and Coca-Cola and everyone else will be considered more of a priority because they're paying rather than something that has some significance culturally.
yeah, and
So,
more ability to pay too.
well, this is it. Well, the cultural memes or the cultural ideas will possibly not. The whole promise of the web was things like uh, distributing these great ideas fast. So they'll clog up the system with paid messages from people like me, arguably too, but the Coca Colas of the world that will convince you that their message is very interesting because they're paying versus stuff that is significant.
Yeah, and
Don't ask me. Yeah,
it kind of pushes us back too, back to, the golden age of media where there was just the push ads and that was it, the big age of
yeah.
TV.
It's getting like that a bit. It's getting like the point where you do need to start paying for everything, because 10, 15 years ago, one good idea could have got good. The idea of going viral these days is pretty hard. We saw one yesterday. Some girl painted Rhiannon's bum on her nose, and then
Oh, okay.
have you seen that one?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
And
that one.
and that got hundreds of thousands of views. Yeah, so there is the possibility on something like a YouTube, someone just a good idea they copy and they spread it among their friends because they think it's great. But it's hard. There's few roaring fire ideas. It's mostly little sparks that we deal with. And those sparks, to get some sense of oxygen, need to be organically pushed through from Facebook. But it's pushing them below the fold a bit. You can't really get that oxygen for ideas as easy. That's an anecdotal. I'm sure Facebook would argue that it's all the
Yeah.
same. But look at the sort of money that they're making these days. They're it's a lot more than I expected them ever to make.
Yeah, true. But I guess there is a balance between, they have to survive as a company too. So they have to have a revenue source and
Oh
sort
yeah.
of balance that between, okay, well, how do we, allow sort of this freedom of ideas and give oxygen. Love how you said it, giving oxygen to these concepts too, so that they can spread and they can sort of communicate the thoughts and feelings of everyday people. So how do you balance that then?
Well, how do they balance it?
Yeah.
They'll balance it with their checkbook. Like that's to be brutally honest, Facebook would dial up the paid if they to the point if they could get away with it.
Well, they
And
seem to
I
be,
think
right? It keeps on, yeah, heading in that direction.
I think it's the classic analogy of the frog in the if you throw a frog into boiling water, then we'll all react. But Facebook have time on their side, so they'll notch it up a few bits, so the water will get hot for us. Till eventually it'll be boiling around us. But the, the 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 reason why Facebook is 120 whatever it was I looked at last 20 billion worth is it's because of the potential to hit 500 billion. So it has 500 million users. I'm not sure what qualifies as a user these days, but I think ultimately my biggest shock is why we haven't jumped on Snapchat quicker. I think that's the one to look at in the next couple of years, because all of a sudden Snapchat, we had them in the other day and they were talking about their revenue streams. They have no idea. Well, I shouldn't say that. They haven't as pinned down how they're going to make money at all on this site, but their money is being thrown at them
Mm.
because that's where the kids are going. They got 100 million plus already. As I said, the Millennials, which are and young millennials are all Snapchatting these days, and it's part of its appeal. Mums and dads are not there, grandmothers are not there. Facebook is being kept because it's where everyone is, but where you want to talk to your friends and when you really want to be influenced, it's Snapchat over here at least. I'm not sure.
But again, we're going to be in the same conundrum if we had this conversation like 2, 3 years down the road. Snapchat's going to be needing to make money to be able to sustain itself for a business.
Yeah.
And yeah, people, if other third party companies are throwing money at it, well, that's a revenue stream too. But there's got to be some, again, balance between, okay, how do we make money out of this and how do we build, that audience and how do we, yeah, get it out there?
Well, yeah, that is. But I think Facebook, there's, I can't imagine there's going to be another Facebook phenomenon. I don't think Snapchat could be as big as because, again, with the speed of everything, you're going to have a Snapchat 2.0 is currently being twiddled at somewhere. But if you can imagine um, the billions that Facebook is worth, and I'd say, let's say Snapchat's going to be worth half of that. It's making money and it's learned of Facebook's mistakes already. I think it's quite profitable. We spoke to them about relatively small um, presence on the site. You were talking 250,000 to get out of bed in the morning.
Mm.
So it's I don't remember spending in the early days on Facebook. I think there's a different model there, because Facebook we were expecting. Sorry, there's someone beside me, but Facebook were a different age, and how they approached it would be different to the way Snapchat approached it, and whether they're ever going to be as big or whether they're going to be greedier or less greedy. It's you have to sort of apply different thoughts.
Yeah. So the
So
disruptors are being disrupted then.
the disruptors are being disrupted, and watch this space with how Snapchat disrupts Facebook. Just simple things like checking the phones of the younger people around. I said, "Can I just see your desktop and on your phone?" I don't know what you call a desktop on a phone top, but
Phone top. Yeah.
they're all Facebook is out
Yeah.
and Snapchat is in the bottom line, the bottom four,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and no SMS messaging in there, anything like that. That's dead. I said, when's the last time you made a phone call? And they said, well, we don't make phone calls. This isn't a phone.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
It's not a
it's
phone.
it's a Snapchatter.
Yeah.
And there's your disruption that you need to keep ahead of the cultural river that you need to swim a little faster than.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, I was gonna ask you, but you kind of answered the questions. What is the next, what's going to happen in this space and from the agency perspective, what's going to happen, do you feel, in this space? Is it just one company disrupting another, or do you see some I don't know, some pathway here?
Um, I see certain. We're doing a good bit on autonomous cars and the future of mobility. We've got a few clients here there's certain things that come to mind. Like people will have cars. They may be smaller cars. They will have wheels. Another client of ours is Michelin, and they will have certain means and ways of getting around roads, because there's nothing in the so there's certain macro things that will stay the same, but the whole just stick in the cars, and this is just probably a good analogy for the entire, because that seems like a very stable industry, and it moves in waves of 10 and 15 years, because when you think of a model, it thinks 10 years in the future. But if you think about what's happening now with the Ubers of the world and the Lyfts of the world, I don't know whether you have Lyft there, but they've got 5 or 6 different types of companies. And then combine that with things like Waze, which is the traffic company. Have you got that there?
No.
Waze tells you congestion.
Oh,
basically
okay.
coming out of New York, because New York is just one big traffic jam. But you have full data being gathered every day by willing users of taxis. If in 5 years there's a massive sale, how will that affect things like the insurance industry? Who's responsible for insurance? There's things like, how will that affect the buying of tires? How will it affect the car ownership? So there's loads of big macro things that it will affect, and that's the sort of disruption that it's sort of stepping outside of digital, but it's all affecting. It's more into the data world, and how that will disrupt the world.
So the disruption is the data side, the big data, understanding what it is that we're actually seeing and doing. And
there is, yeah. It was like I did a bit of research on, this. There was this guy driving a Lyft. Lyft cars are like Uber in New York, and he was saying the future belongs to me. But little did he know that all the data that he's given Lyft will be used to power that autonomous car in possibly 5 years' time. And the most efficient future for New York, for instance, is autonomous driven cars, driven by the knowledge that Waze has accumulated over the years, and it'll increase the speed from 5 miles an hour on average to about 20 miles an hour. So, and there's no need for a taxi driver anymore. So those 120,000 taxi drivers will go out of business.
Yeah.
All those bus drivers will go out of business. All those sort of things. So, and that's on our doorstep. That's in 5. So that's the sort of, I can't tell you what's the next big thing happening. It's just that the accumulation of data now, and how people are using that behind the scenes for the next wave.
Yeah, no, fascinating. Okay, cool. Well, that's kind of wraps things up that I wanted to talk to you about, John.
Well, that was good.
Yeah, no, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time. For all the listeners out there, you'll be able to find transcripts and any links and that sort of thing at thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. And so we had John Lynch, the group planning director, and hopefully I get it right this time, TBWA, New York.
That's the one.
Creative and Digital Agency. All right. Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Don. That was that.
Thank you very much for listening to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. If you have any comments on the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter at Doyle Bueller with the hashtag #OwnOnline. I would really appreciate it if you could share this podcast with your network, as I'm sure they will get some value from it for building their successful business online as well. You can find the resources that we talked about, as well as the transcript and full podcast for download on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast, or on iTunes or on SoundCloud. I'm Doyle Bueller, and I will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Digital with Doyle Bueller. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all of the notes, links, and details on this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion, How to Overcome the Misguidance and Misinformation Online, just send an email to doyle@thedigitaldelusion.com. See you online.